think you did it.
A big clap.
Good job.
I need to get a clapper.
I think you can just use your hands. You don't need to buy anything else.
The clappers are so cool.
Yeah, I guess. But
and you can write on it like episode 2.
Oh,
blah,
like a
blah,
clapper board. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Did you think I meant like fake hands clapping?
Yeah, I did. I did, and I was like, all right, maybe you don't need to buy that.
No, we do need to get
The
a sign. And I was looking, and I didn't find anything like cool looking.
I looked too, but I just looked on Amazon, so I didn't do like deep research.
Yeah, that's where I looked too. I Amazoned it, and I just couldn't find anything. Everything was just kind of cheesy. I was like, meh, I want like one of the big neon plug-in, talking about cheesy. But
no, I agree. I think that would look really nice.
I think it would be cool.
It would look good. And then you can have it in the window and people can walk by.
Surrounded by the flies from the...
I wasn't going to say that.
Having a little fly problem. I think the windows need to be sealed. There aren't any critters. It's not dirty in here.
No.
It's a window seal problem.
We have ants at our house right now.
Ew.
I mean, we just need to get the exterminator out. We live in a sandy area.
It's been so wet.
Mm-hmm.
They come in. Mm-hmm. That's what happens.
Oh, well, what can you do?
We get the little tiny ones in our like lower level bathroom once a year. It's so annoying. Ants are I have a thing.
A thing?
With ants. I hate them. They make my skin crawl. Like I can find a tick and be like, oh, whatever.
Well, that's gross. I can't do ticks. I can do an ant.
Ants, nope. I don't know. I think because I know that they live in like the bazillions and they could probably take over the world if they wanted to.
That's scary, I guess. I never thought of it.
There's so many of them. Like if they coordinated.
Good thing they're dumb.
I don't know. They seem pretty smart. I had like a whole like ant massacre on my front patio between 2 ant colonies. It was really,
that's crazy.
It was really bizarre.
That's crazy.
So good morning.
Good morning.
So Victoria Robillard, you are a financial advisor.
I am. That's my day job.
That is your day job. Okay.
It's my night job too sometimes.
How long
my
have you...
weekend job. My 24/7
I'm not going to ask you
job.
about your Tuesday night job.
Right? That's where I teach knitting.
That's completely not the direction.
What I do, but on Mondays, not on Tuesdays.
You actually do?
I actually do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. How old are you?
42, I think. I don't even know.
Wow.
41, 42.
That's very cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like carry around your knitting bag with you and like do you go see a movie and like knit while you watch the movie in the theater?
Used to.
Oh no.
I used to, not anymore. I don't knit as much as I used to, but yeah, I used to.
What do you like to knit?
Anything. I'll do anything. Hats, scarves. I like to keep my hands busy, and I think that's more so than actually what I'm even creating. It's the fact that even sitting here now without like just sitting, I know we're talking and that's part of it, but it's very challenging.
Yeah, so it's like your fidget.
Yeah.
That's why I like holding the mic instead of having the boom because it gives me something to like focus. Like, oh, I have something,
and you have to like focus on keeping it here.
Yeah, but I'll be fidgeting otherwise.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like it's a millennial problem too. We all fidget.
Maybe, but we didn't have like fidgets as kids. We weren't allowed to like fidget at school. No. You had to sit there.
Maybe that's.
This is totally not what we were planning to talk about, but do you know that kids can just get up and walk around the classroom whenever they want?
Whenever they want?
Yeah.
That's good.
What the kids said, I guess. But then you don't have kids who can like sit there for, I mean, I get it after a certain amount of time, like kids shouldn't sit still all day, but I think they need to build up the resilience to sit there for an hour, maybe, by the time they're in like 7th grade. I'm not talking about kindergarteners or preschoolers or even like 2nd graders, but like by the time you're in 7th grade, I feel like you should have to sit.
I tell my son a lot, like one of the best lessons you can learn is how to be bored. Like you're going to be bored and you're going to have to be waiting a lot in life. Like you have to figure out how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're going to drive yourself insane.
Yeah.
I been following the Karen Reed trial. And there was actually a comment by one of the news people that have been following the trial and giving recaps, talking about the jury and all the sidebars that have been happening and how they can physically see such a difference with the jury when somebody's on the stand and like the jury's attentive and they're like really engaged, and then all the sidebars and the waiting, and it's like they become a totally different jury where they're just clearly annoyed. But they made the point of saying, this is a...
The camera just shut off, and I don't know which one it was.
Why is it shut off?
I don't know. I'll get up and check.
I'm going to turn the air on.
There you go.
Take two.
Take two. Do you want to just continue where we were or start again?
We'll just continue.
So tell me about the Karen Reed trial. Their jurors are bored?
The juries are clearly bored. And they made a point of saying, like, this is a very young jury. They're not used to not having their phones and like things to occupy. So during all of these sidebars, which like there's a lot of just sitting there and waiting and like having to leave the room and come back, like they've got nothing.
Yeah.
They're bored and they're not supposed to be talking to each other about the case so much either and like influencing one another, so they can't
have a conversation. They can't.
Yeah. So I just thought it was interesting.
They need like some crossword. If they had knitting, they'd be fine.
I wonder if they would allow that, or if that would be like
so I
weapons.
I brought it to jury duty before, and I was able to bring it into the like juror room. I couldn't bring it in the courtroom. So like when you went back after listening to the trial and like you had those sidebars and you had to wait, I could knit. So it was good. You can bring it on planes. They're not weapons. It's fine.
They could be.
I guess, yeah.
Well, so, okay. You're a financial planner, but you were an architect previously. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. It seems like very vastly different things.
It's actually so similar, you would be surprised. In architecture, you've got kind of a series you go through. Any type of design, there's a formula that you go through. It starts with kind of thinking about the problem, where you are. Then you look at the surroundings, what's happening in that area. How can we design to make sure we're capturing the sun in the right way and the wind in the right way? What's around us in terms of the vernacular of the buildings? What does it look like around us? Are we mimicking it? Are we going to go against it? Really understanding the surroundings of where we are and understanding what's going to happen inside that building. So we know, all right, we've got, this is going to be a car lot where we're going to sell used cars or whatever. What do we need to have for bathrooms? What do we need to have for all of those pieces so that the building itself can be successful? And in planning for your finances, you do the same thing. You look at, all right, your life, Vicki, we're close to the same age. We live close to the same area. Our lives are very different, though. So when we plan financially, the camera went off again. We're just going to keep going.
Let's just check which one.
I think it's probably that one. The center one.
Okay.
So
that's fine.
We'll figure it out. So when we look at it financially, you have to look at all those things around you. You have to see, all right, where we are in life, where we've come from. What does our money vernacular look like? What do we think about money? How does that make us feel? And then putting that into a plan. And just like in construction or design, you then follow that plan through the life of the construction, through the life of the design. If you're good, you go back to that building years later and say, all right, what's working, what's not working? How can we learn from it? With a financial plan, we follow it through your life. We constantly are looking at what's working, what's not. And we have the ability to change in a financial plan. So it's really, really similar.
How long were you doing architecture?
I was there. I started young and I worked there probably like close to 10 years before I had my kids. And then I took a step back.
What made you make that switch?
We had, so like financial planning, like being a financial advisor, you work long hours, like being a real estate agent. The hours are not 9 to 5. If you've got a job, you're working till 2 a.m. If you've got to get those drawings on the plane, you're driving to the airport to make sure they get to UPS so they can get on that flight that leaves at midnight.
You're working weekends. You're possibly working holidays.
Yeah.
Like there's no
stop because you've got deadlines you have to meet for other people. And so when we had our kids, my husband also had a job where he was working 60 hours a week and growing his name in the company he works for. And we looked at our finances and we said, you know what? It doesn't make sense for me to work 60 hours a week to not have somebody home with our kids, to be paying somebody for all that time. And we said, all right, I was going to take a step back because that was the opportunity that I had at the time. And I'm happy I did. But the thought was always to go back to architecture. It was only going to be a short break. And in that time, I saw what my husband did, and he works for a big financial company here near Boston. And I was like, I kind of want to do that. And he goes, well, you don't do that with an architecture degree. I'm like, I know, you're right. And he was right. He was not mean about it. He was not condescending. But, you know, that idea of like, well, you can't do that with an architecture degree, but there's so many things I could do with it. So I networked in and I used like the public speaking skills from architecture, the kind of looking at the bigger picture from architecture, and brought that to my role at the big company I worked for Fidelity, where he worked for a while. And I brought that to that role too. And I did well there and I loved it. Never thought that I'd leave Fidelity. I thought we would, lead green forever, and it's a great company. And I can't say enough good things about being an employee there and a spouse of an employee, but an opportunity came out to work with individuals on an individual basis, and I couldn't pass it up. And I'm so happy because now I've got that flexibility we need. Our kids are 10 and 13, and so they don't need me every day, thank goodness, but they still need me to be there for them, to be at those baseball games and those dance recitals. And this gives me the flexibility to do that.
Yeah. And if this age is like, this is what they remember, right? Like, obviously it's important to be there for them when they're little, but as they grow into young adults, like what they really truly remember is like this age.
Yeah.
They don't remember when they were 4 and 5 and 6.
Yeah.
They remember being preteens and teens and who was there and who wasn't. And so that's.
And they need a lot of rides. So many rides.
So don't their friends.
I know.
Yesterday, I felt like all I did yesterday was sit in a car.
Really?
It was awful.
It was a nice day though. Did you roll the windows down?
I did. And actually I had a few showings at my listing and I had a gap in between. So I went and got lunch and sat down by the beach. And I just like sat on the beach and it was awesome. And a friend of mine who used to live in Carver but moved down to that area of South Plymouth, she happened to be sitting on the beach with her kids.
Nice.
So it was perfect. I was like, hey, wait a minute. She's like sprawled out on her belly. It's like, I know that bum.
That's awesome.
So
and that listing, you can walk right to the beach.
I know. So like it's that, I think about like, do I want to be doing something like this long term where my weekends are taken up and I don't have a schedule and it's hard to plan things because when something comes up, like I have to be there. Otherwise it's money out of my pocket. It's, letting down a client. It's risking them going with somebody else because their life isn't going to stop. But you also do get that flexibility. At 1:00 in the afternoon, I was getting a lobster roll and sitting on the beach,
so jealous.
Eating a little tiramisu cake thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think
on a Tuesday afternoon.
There are certainly trade-offs, but I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, my daughter has a big dance show on Saturday, but they have a rehearsal tomorrow that starts at 4:00. I think she has 13 costumes. And I'm really good about organizing them when I get them and making sure everything's there. But I'm going to have to take a couple of hours tomorrow to go through all the costumes, all the makeup, just make sure everything's lined up. And I have the flexibility to do that, to sit there and be like, all right, I'll leave work at 2:00 on a Friday when I could still work for 5 or 6 hours and get stuff done to get that done. And I can go back and I can work Saturday morning or Sunday morning and make it up if I need to.
And what's nice about working one-on-one, like you work with individuals one-on-one, similar to what I do, those individuals have lives too and they get it.
Yeah.
So if you tell them like what you have going on, like they get it.
Yeah.
And they'll kind of work around that because it becomes more of that relationship versus corporate. Like there's no face to it. It's just, well, I need to get this done.
Yeah. And versus getting, I mean, there are certain deadlines that I do have in terms of, you know, the market closes at 4:00. I need to make sure I do all of the stuff I do before 4, but it's not like when I was in architecture and you had to get it to the building department by this time. So it had to be there. No matter what happened, you had to be on the, you know, your drawings had to be on the plane to California at that time. So that's really nice too.
Yeah. Architecture sounds like it would be fun. I think my son would be really good at it.
It's a lot of work. Not that real estate isn't, not that finance isn't, not that a lot of other jobs aren't. It's not what people think it is early on. So people kind of, I don't know, do you remember Seinfeld?
Yeah.
And George used to be like, I'm an architect. And people think like they get to go and they get to design the buildings and they get to do those fun pieces and they get to go to the sites and they get to pick which colors and all that. And that's a small piece of it. You know, a lot of it is the codes and understanding, all right, do we have enough bathrooms? Is the door handle on the right side of this?
All the nitty gritty.
All the nitty gritty and dealing with contractors and not that
dealing with towns,
towns,
inspectors,
dealing with individuals or business owners who want this building done in 2 weeks, but it doesn't happen like that. Or
a good friend of mine, she's an architect and her company does a lot of work for towns doing designing schools.
Yeah.
And she's been like, she's just non-existent for months at a time, like months and months, because it's just so much work.
Yeah.
And you see what it does. Like she is wiped out.
Yep.
But then to be able to have
a school
as a finished product, she sent us the video of the whole inside of it. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And then to know like what this is going to do for people was huge.
Yeah.
But it is a ton. And like all the regulatory, making everything like compliant and
and if it's a public school, there's a whole oversight board just for buildings for public schools that you have to go through for everything, the meetings, all of it,
which are all on schedules so it can hold you up, and then budgets, and if there's a budget cut, if something happens, like your whole job could get halted, everything that you'd been working on.
Or if it rains on the wrong day.
Right.
I mean, silly things like that could hold you up for a while too.
It's a lot.
It is, but everything's a lot, I think. There's nothing easy in life, so that's all right.
So question for you. As a mom of a 10 and 13-year-old, I have a almost 13-year-old. So money, obviously, is the sooner we can get our kids thinking in terms of a good relationship with money, the better, right? Do you have any advice for parents of how to do that in a way that's not boring, that isn't scary to them? Like, how can we get our kids not just like thinking like, oh, if I do my chores, I get my spending money, but how do we get them thinking a little bit bigger about investing and what that might look like? And, I clearly remember growing up hearing like, if you start saving, just put aside $5 a day every day. If you start at age 25, you'll have X amount. And then feeling like when I hit 30, like, oh crap, I didn't do that. Like I screwed up, right? Like it's got to be something, it's got to hit deeper than that.
Yeah. And I think to start is having those open conversations at the dinner table. And not that you need to bring your kids into all the nuances of your personal finances in running your household, but have them have an understanding of like, well, we want to go out to dinner and here's what dinner costs. And if we look at that, here's what we make. And we are able to go out to dinner because we're working and we're working in such a way that we have this extra income, but just having those open conversations about like money and where it goes, even to start. So even
do your kids know what you make?
They do not know like the number because that's kind of abstract for kids at this point. If we were to say, we make X amount of dollars a year. That's very abstract, but they understand in the grand scheme of things, like how we fit into the ecosystem of the socioeconomics. And I know that makes it sound even more word salad than we make this amount a year. But the understanding is
they understand if you're comfortable or if where you have like where you might struggle or not struggle.
And then we talk about too how we got to this point. You know, Mark grew up with money was a very different story than when I grew up with money. And we both grew up fine and we both were happy and healthy and we had parents who cared for us. But my parents were great with money. They've always been really good with money. And that meant that if I wanted rollerblades, I had to save up and it wasn't my birthday or Christmas, I had to save up half that money to get those rollerblades. And it made me realize like, oh, there's work that goes into that. And then my parents were blessed enough to be able to supply that other half. Mark wanted rollerblades. His parents just bought it for him. And it was just a different relationship. And kind of giving them those tools to understand, you know, I can get hockey equipment whenever I need it. That's great for me. But now I need to understand, all right, that hockey equipment costs money. And here are those sacrifices we have to make to make it work. And just having that understanding that, oh, you want those brand new skates? That's great. We're able to give this to you and we're so happy to do it because this is something you love. But realize on the other side that this is going to come out of something else that we might not be able to do because we're buying those skates. And we have those conversations in a very abstract way. I know it sounds confusing, but it works. You know, it's just the open conversations, I think, more than anything else, and not hiding money issues. And granted, you don't need to talk to your kids about your credit card debt if you have credit card debt, but my husband...
I don't.
I know, you're so good.
It took a long time, and I don't say that to like gloat. I say that because...
You should be so proud, though.
I struggled so much in my 20s and even into my 30s with credit card debt and like always feeling like I was grabbing, like trying to get out, and then something would happen, and it finally was like to be clear of it. And
it's good. But have those conversations with your son and say, like, credit cards aren't bad. Leveraging credit for the right reasons in the right way can be super, super beneficial as you build your wealth. But struggling in credit card debt, being overwhelmed by credit card debt is a whole different conversation. So, and I think we need to teach our kids, like, yeah, we've got a credit card. Yeah, we can just swipe that credit card. It's not really how it works. Those credit cards need to be paid off in a certain way, or another camera just went out, or need to be tracked, or you need to be using it in the right way to make it beneficial. So I think having those conversations about learn from my mistakes. You know, you get a credit card, that's great. That limits $5,000. You do not need to go out and spend $5,000.
Right. That's not,
right
you
away.
Don't have $5,000 in your pocket.
Exactly. And you'll utilize that if you need it. You know, if you need to buy books for school.
Right.
Yeah. Utilize that $5,000. Utilize that credit, because what are those books going to give you in the end? A better education, the ability to earn more money in the long run. Do you need to use it to go buy a skateboard? Well, if skateboard gets you to school, maybe not. Do you need to utilize it to go buy candy at the store? Probably not.
Right.
And kind of having that understanding of needs, wants, and wishes too. You know, books for school, that's a need. A skateboard could go in the need, it could go in the wants, it could go in the wishes. And where does that line up? And understanding that when you look at spending that money, are you spending it mostly on your needs? Are you spending it mostly on your wants, or are you spending it on your wishes and putting yourself in a place that it's going to be hard to get out of in the future? So looking at it in terms of, what are you setting yourself up for tomorrow when this bill comes?
Right.
You know, and having those conversations too, because if you're going to be making, you know, double the money next year because you just graduated college and you made no money last year, and next year you just got this job where you're going to be making $100,000 a year, maybe you can splurge a little bit, knowing that that's coming down the pipeline and knowing what your risk tolerance is and how you're going to repay yourself back in the future.
So our cameras died, -1. So we'll wrap up. But I would love, I don't know, I think you should do like a seminar for kids.
I think I should too. And I think I I feel like I word saladed that a little bit, and I need to get my
You didn't.
in
I
order
would like as
better
a parent, I would just like more, I guess, like specific
lists and to do
topics and like, I guess, examples of what a conversation looks like.
That's a good idea.
And I'm going to say thank you for everybody for listening before my camera shuts off too.
So one thing my kids know a lot about is what's going on in the world financially. And that can be overwhelming for a lot of people. So we bring kind of that topics to the dinner table too. And that's a great way to even start saying, hey, inflation. Do you know what inflation is? A lot of people don't. And that's okay.
A lot of people don't have the dinner table to have the conversations.
That's
us
true.
included. I
mean,
think that was just like, we do have good conversation with the three of us, my husband and Cole and myself, but we don't have that, like very rarely do we sit down together for dinner. So we don't have like that regular time that we can depend on to know.
So that's really interesting that you should say that. That's going to bring me back to money and something we talked about before. I know you do not like going out to dinner. I know that's something that you do not care to do, and that's okay. I absolutely
boring.
love to go out to dinner. But we have, and going out to dinner is expensive too. It costs a lot of money, but we've set ourselves up so that we do go out to dinner as a family at least once or twice a week because we're sitting down at the table together. So we've prioritized that idea of sitting down at the table together. Everybody's there. You really can't go anywhere. No one's jumping up to get ketchup out of the fridge or washing a dish or taking a phone
not
call.
On.
Yeah, so it's a really focused time. So we've kind of taken that time and said, all right, we're going to allocate money to that. And we've had a conversation about that. And we talked to our kids about the fact that, yeah, most people probably shouldn't go out to dinner as much as we do. It's not economic for you, for most families. It's not really economic for us, but we value this time together. So we're putting the money there because that's a priority for us.
That's a good plan.
But I know you don't like to go out to dinner.
Well, we can do it over ice cream instead.
You could pick something like that or a walk. But I mean, you have to eat dinner most days.
You have to have dessert too.
I guess. I mean, if you are a dessert person, then totally do that. But I'm always like, oh, I'm so tired. I ate so much. I can't
see
eat
this
dessert.
happening at like Cupcake Charlie's.
Yeah.
Or like Ziggy's.
Yeah, and I agree. But just make sure it does happen.
Yeah.